Welcome back again to Hoops HD, everybody. It is still Thursday night, February 9th, and
Yeah.
this is our bracket
Building show.
bracket builder show. Welcome to the
Yeah.
Hoops HD bracket builder show. This is the all-time premiere season debut episode.
I think it's been 8 years since we've done one of these and made a podcast out of it. And the last time we tried it, instead of building a seed list, we tried to select teams, build a seed list, and bracket them all in one motion, and we failed.
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining me for this portion of the show, we've got David Dorman, John Stalika, and David Griggs.
And is that Kyle Lamb in the bunker right there?
No,
Yeah.
no bunker. No.
Yeah.
But what we are going to do is on this show is in our last podcast that we just finished, we created a 1 through 68 seed list. Go up
Yeah.
there and watch it if
Yeah.
you haven't watched
See
it yet.
I
If you
see
look
it.
below
Yeah.
us, you'll see the
Yeah.
final bracket that we're going to create
Yeah.
here. You ruined the whole show. Don't do
Yeah.
that. What the actual tournament selection committee does once they have that finalized 1 through 68 seed list is they then create the bracket. And there's a lot of bracketing rules. You go on the NCAA website, you can read through them. We're going to do that. And if you're
We're not going to read through it. We're not going to read you the rules.
If you're a bracketologist, you want to be a bracketologist, you want to figure out how these brackets are created, you'll see that's a lot of it's very difficult. We have a little bit of a cheat here. We are not going to sit here and look at each team's schedules to see who they may have played during the regular season and whether or not that's an illegal matchup or things like that. We've got our handy workbook that we use all the time. And this is a page that I don't think we've ever shown during any of our shows.
So this is sort of like Hoops HD behind the scenes here. This is part of the workbook that not everybody gets to see. And it's pretty much identical to what the selection committee has. And one of the reasons we decided to do this isn't just to educate our viewer. It's to assist the selection committee in case they forgot how this works.
Now, let me explain here. I'm unfortunately going to do a lot more talking than I normally do during this show, but let me explain here what we're looking at for those of you that have never seen it before, which is probably all of you.
All of you.
I'm going to start at the bottom left. This is a list of 1 through 68. This is the exact same seed list we just created up there. You'll see the teams that are highlighted here. These are our first 4 teams as the at-large, the first 4 teams on the automatic bid list there. But 1 through 68. You'll see the top 4 teams are actually crossed out. Teams will automatically be crossing out in here as we put them in here. And the top 4 teams, we know exactly where they're going to go. They can go 1 through 4 across the top line there. So already in place. When it comes to the national semifinals, Purdue's region will play Kansas's region. Alabama's region will play Houston's region. What else do we have here?
Chad,
yes.
Chad, how come you put Purdue in the Midwest?
I didn't put Purdue anywhere yet.
Yeah, we haven't put them anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thought you were going to explain it. My bad.
No, yeah. Right up here above them is where we're going to choose what region they're in. If you look down here, let's go to the bottom right corner. I'll give a shout out to our friend Kyle Lamb. He developed the formula for this, and without it, this workbook would not be nearly as powerful as it is. This is a mileage calculator. We have all of the first and second round sites here, all of the regional sites here, and each team, as they come up, it will tell us what their mileage is from their campus to these various sites. So as we look at this right now, we know you can see that Purdue's closest region is going to be Louisville, the South region.
Yeah, and it's highlighted in green in case you don't know how to count.
Yep. Even makes it easier.
Mileage as the crow flies. It's not like a driving distance, for example.
Yes, but if you want to do this on your own, you could go to MapQuest and literally type in the distance from Purdue to Louisville and figure it out. As we put teams in, we're probably going to have some errors show up. That is various errors. Up here is kind of our little cheat sheet code to what these various colored errors mean. Below that is a section we'll put our first 4 teams in it. When we get to them, you'll see that. But the process involves the following. The first thing that the committee will do in bracketing is assign the 4 1 seeds to their 4 regions.
Yes.
Second thing they'll do is put the rest of the protected seeds in. That's teams 5 through 16 into the bracket.
Yep.
Third thing they'll do is assign each of those 16 seeds to these 8 regional sites. Each regional site gets used twice. Then they'll fill out the rest of the bracket.
Yeah.
That is the process there.
Now, Chad, for viewers who may be coming in for the first time, what is a protected seed right here?
A protected seed is the top 16 teams. It is also a consideration. The only consideration the workbook is not going to show for us. We'll have to figure it out on our own. Those 16 teams are not to be placed at a home court disadvantage in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So if one of the first round sites, instead of being Greensboro, was Asheville, North Carolina, UNC Asheville should not be playing games in Asheville, North Carolina,
Which
because
I'm pretty sure they can't do anyway.
no, they are not. They're not being playing their build. They wouldn't.
Okay.
There are two arenas in Asheville.
Okay.
There is a downtown arena where they play the SoCon tournament in addition to UNC Asheville's home building. So it's possible if Asheville was a site, but it's not a site this year, so it doesn't matter. Anyhow, very simple here. You can see right here from the mileage calculator, Purdue is closest to Louisville. They absolutely would want to be in the South region. They are the #1 overall team, and we'll put them in the South region.
Right.
And I think it's also worth mentioning that any team that's in contention for a #1 overall seed can also submit regional and sub-regional preferences to the NCAA basketball.
I could go a little bit splitter than you had Sleeka. Every single,
All
three of the
363 do that. Yeah.
are asked, submit to the NCAA where they prefer to play, and the only one the NCAA will look at is the #1 overall.
Yeah.
So Purdue right now definitely submit
Yeah.
it.
Still,
If you
again,
are
this is
Maryland
true.
if you're Maryland Eastern Shore, you can submit one. It's probably not going to go very far.
Right. No, this is true. It is done online now. And it's like when you fill something out, you'll get an error message if you don't answer all the questions. You cannot submit your postseason credentials unless you answer that question.
Well, our second #2 team is Alabama, and as you can see here, Alabama would prefer to go to Louisville, but that's a problem because Purdue's already there.
Yeah.
So we'd send them to Kansas City instead, correct? The Midwest region.
Yeah, which sucks for Kansas, but that's how it works. Yeah.
When we go to Houston, up next, well, Kansas City's not available. Next closest will be Vegas, so they're going to Vegas.
Yeah.
Houston will be our 1 seed in the West. Kansas, by default, ends up being our 1 seed in the East. Going to the games in New York City should they get out of their first 2 rounds.
So you can see it's important to get high up on the seed list. There is a definite built-in
Yes.
advantage.
Right. So if Alabama's #1 overall, they get to go to Louisville instead of Kansas City. If Houston gets #2, they get Kansas City, not Vegas.
Mhm.
A lot of people say, "Oh, it's a 1 seed. What's the difference?" Everyone, I got a 1-2. No, it's a big deal how
Yeah.
they rank the 1 seed because you can play a lot closer to home if you are the overall 1 seed versus the 4.
Now,
Correct.
when we get to #5 overall, there's one very special rule here. #5 overall team is not allowed to go to the same region as the #1 overall team. It's a special rule that only applies to that one team. In fact, if I tried to put Arizona in the South region, I would get one of those error codes because it's an invalid team, not allowed.
Mhm.
So obviously, of these 4 sites, though, Arizona would much rather be in Las Vegas anyhow. So that's where we're going to throw them.
Mhm.
Texas is up next. They prefer to be in Kansas City. That'd be their closest site. You throw
Yeah.
them there. Up next is Baylor. Well, Baylor between Louisville and New York would rather be in Louisville, so we throw Baylor over there.
Yeah.
But
And this is where
technically
we
they could
suddenly
not.
This is where we suddenly run into our first problem, and it's going to suck for Arizona that we ran into it. Kansas State's our #8 overall team. As the 4th team from the Big 12, the first 4 teams from the same conference all must go to separate regions. That means that these 3 Big 12 teams, Baylor, Texas, and Kansas State, have to go to the West, Midwest, and South. So I'm going to delete everything we did on this row, because no matter what, our good friend Titel and you, Dorman, are going to love this. Arizona's going to have to go east because of this, despite being
Yeah.
#5 overall. Again, the problem here is that Kansas being the Big 12 team already in New York, we have 3 more Big 12 teams on this line.
Yeah.
So we try this again. Texas to Kansas City, Baylor to Louisville, K-State to Vegas. Now, you're seeing these numbers pop up in red sometimes down here. Sleeka, want to explain what these numbers here are?
These are going to be what we call the weighted averages right here. So if you look at the South region, for example, you have Purdue that's #1 overall plus Baylor, who is #7 overall. That region has a score of 8. Likewise, in the Midwest region, Alabama is #2 overall, and Texas is going to be #6 overall. So that region will have a score of 8. The highest score we have so far is in the West, which is going to be the 3rd rated Houston and 8th rated Kansas State. So far, we do not have a problem because we only have a variance of 3.
Yeah,
Right. Once we get all 16 protected seeds in, if we have a variance of more than 5, we have out of balance regions and we've got to move some teams around.
mhm.
Well, let's go to the 3 line here. First team up is UCLA. Not only did Arizona not go to Vegas, conference rival UCLA, the way this works out, does get to go
Yeah.
there. Sorry, Zona
It
fans.
works out that way sometimes. Yeah.
And I could see if this bracket came out this way, Arizona fans screaming about it. But this
and
is
they
why
would
these
be.
things work.
They always do.
But from
The-
a region balance standpoint, we also could use UCLA in the West right here.
Yeah.
Tennessee closest to Louisville, so we would send them there. Xavier of the 2, Kansas City or New York. It's
Kansas
actually
City would be
very,
closest.
very close here, but we'd send them over here to Kansas City. If we could just spell them correctly. And then Virginia gets to go to New York.
Yeah.
Now, again, we'll check into that region balance, and everybody's within 3 of each other. So that's pretty darn good so far.
Yeah.
Moving on to the 4 line, Marquette. They would want to go to Louisville, correct?
Either there. Yeah. That's what the
Yeah.
computer says.
Here says that's
I
the
was
closest
thinking
to-
they'd want to go to New York. I mean, there's more to do in New York.
Mm.
Great
UConn-
pizza in New York.
UConn, obviously, New York is going to be their closest city.
Yeah.
We'll be sending
Gonzaga,
Zach on the train.
Gonzaga to Vegas. Now TCU. Now this is our 5th Big 12 team, which means that they can go in the same region. They have to be in a region that a Big 12 team isn't already.
Yeah.
So can safely go to Kansas City,
And-
and we've got a pretty balanced regions here: 3 at 35 and 1 at 31.
Yeah, and there was debate. So TCU doesn't get kicked out of the tournament. They're allowed to play in it.
They are allowed to play in it.
Okay. Now,
Uh,
Chan, I can't help but notice that you're not really looking at the bracket when you're doing this. I know a lot of people say, oh, the committee did this or they wanted to match these teams up. It looks like you're just following the bracketing rules and you're not really conscious of really who's playing who.
And,
But it-
our friend John Titel interviewed Charles McClellan the other day. McClellan, the associate or the vice chairman of the committee, and he mentioned this is all done by computers, very similar, not the same program we use, but it's done by computers, and there's not much debate and not much decisions to be made by the committee in this process. But let's take a look. This is what we're kind of looking at right now here. If we take a look at where we are, so with this done so far, you can see our potential regional semifinals here.
Mhm.
We have a Virginia, Arizona potential regional semifinal. We have Xavier, Texas.
Mhm.
Some interesting looking
Yeah.
games though here. Houston,
Right,
Gonzaga
and-
will be a regional semifinal. The winner gets UCLA or K-State.
Yeah. And you mentioned that is step 1. Step 2, and we'll show you the bracket again once we complete step 2. We're assigning the cities.
Yes.
Or,
And-
the regional sites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you
fun.
look up at this list here of these 8 cities. These are the 8 sites for the first and second round games. Each one can be used twice. Each one of these 16, which will create the 16 pods, basically.
Yeah.
So we go in order, not any S curve, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, down through 16, and we assign a first and second round site to each city, each team. So we start with Purdue. Clearly, you can see now. You can look over here in this section. The one that's highlighted is Columbus, and that's where Purdue most likely would want to play for its first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Next up, Alabama. I think they want to go to Birmingham. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not a bad choice.
Correct. And you can see how the 116, 8, 9, it fills it in. So that's
Yes.
yeah.
This automatically is going to put the 8, the 9, and the 16 seeds in the South region in Columbus as well. Same
Yeah.
thing with with Birmingham in the Midwest. Houston, no sites in Texas this year. Birmingham is this closest city there. Now we just use Birmingham choice on the 1 line, but Dorman, that is allowed.
That is absolutely allowed. Houston gets their preference of closest site as being the 3. Doesn't matter that Alabama is also a 1 seed. Houston gets Birmingham.
Now, nobody else can go to Birmingham now. You'll see it's highlighted in
Correct.
dark blue over here. That means that's it. Birmingham is closed.
Yeah.
The city's officially closed.
Birmingham is shut down. It's like it's like Disney World. They just closed for the day.
Kansas, Des Moines is their obvious choice. Now we go to Arizona. Their choice is going to be. Ooh, I just accidentally clicked the wrong button there.
Oh,
So
nice
keep
going,
Kansas as the
Chad.
ball.
Yeah, you
A-
put
Ariz-
Kansas up in Albany.
Arizona to Denver.
Yeah.
Texas. Now they would like to go to Birmingham, but they can't. So their
Yeah.
next closest city looks like it's going to be Denver, actually.
Because Birmingham is closed.
Because we did close Birmingham. Baylor also would like to go to Birmingham, but it is closed.
But it is closed.
So they'd like to go to Denver, but that looks like it's closed as well. So we're sending them to Des Moines, it looks like. So
Wow.
Baylor,
And
you're out
that
to Des
really
Moines.
sucks for some of the other teams.
So we both have Kansas and Baylor both going to Des Moines. K-State can't go to Des Moines, can't go to Birmingham. Their next closest city is going to be take the last spot in Columbus, it looks like.
Hmm.
That's kind of strange that we've used 4 cities twice and 4 cities not at all, but it could, in theory, happen, and it did here. So
Yeah. And that really stinks for Xavier and some of these other teams that are.
Albany's still out there. Greensboro's still out
Yeah.
there.
Now,
UCLA.
the reason, now let's stop for a moment here. Now, one of the reasons why he brings up Xavier is because they are within driving distance, or what the NCAA would call bus distance, because they're 350 miles or less from their campus sites. So it seemed like Kansas State, who would be flying to their destination regardless, will end up going to Columbus.
Mhm.
I'll also throw this out here. It's not going to apply at all in this bracket here, but on the right hand side here, you see who the hosts are for each of these schools. If you are for each of these sites, if you're the host for the site, you cannot play in that site. None of the hosts there are in their field, so we don't have to worry about it this year. But if Louisville was in this field, they would not be allowed to play in the South region at all.
And if Louisville makes the field, there will be a congressional investigation.
If Sacramento State, for example, wins the Big Sky automatic bid, they will not be able to go to the Sacramento region when we get to placing them in the field here, because they are the host city. And there is an error code, a dark green error code that would come up if we tried that. UCLA, number 9 overall, they're going to go to Sacramento.
Mhm.
Tennessee, number 10 overall, they're going to go to Greensboro. Xavier, as we said, we've shut off a few of their other cities. Salika, how about Greensboro for you?
That is technically within driving distance or bus distance.
Which knocks Virginia out of Greensboro and sends Virginia up to Albany. So yeah, that's very interesting here, actually. Marquette's up next. They're also going to be going to Albany, it looks like. Nobody wants to go to Orlando. I don't know. I kind of would like to go to Orlando. Orlando's a fun city.
I know. Yeah.
Let's send UConn to Orlando.
Mhm.
There's only a couple of choices left. Number 15 overall, Gonzaga obviously is going to want to go to Sacramento between that and Orlando. TCU, number 16, you get what's left. It's the final spot in Orlando. Now, we go back to the bracket here. Now we have all the cities filled in as well. So
Yeah.
so there you go. That's what we've reached so far. Now, we didn't really discuss some of the errors that codes that are going to start showing up here, but there are some that we may start seeing. I'll go quickly through some of these rules here. Teams from the same conference cannot play each other until the regional, can play each other as early as the second round if they only met once during the regular season. Regional semifinals if you met twice. Regional finals if you met 3 times, and would include conference tournament games. For this exercise, we're not assuming any conference tournament games, so we're just going by regular season matchups. You also are supposed to try to avoid regular season rematches
in the round of 64.
In the round of 64 and the round of 32. New rule this year. Also try to avoid them in the round of 32. Also try to avoid them between first 4 teams. Also try to avoid rematches of last year's NCAA tournament. Any NCAA tournament games from last year's tournament in those rounds. Now, if you have a rule about the conference teams that you cannot find a way to move teams around on the same seed line to fix, you are allowed to move a team off a seed line. You can move an 8 seed up to a 7. You can move an 11 seed down to a 12, that type of thing. The regular season, the rematches from last year of the regular season, you don't move, it's not strong enough a rule that you would not move a team off of its seed line to make that rule take place. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we now go ahead and we're going to put the rest of the teams in. We're going to start with Iowa State. They're number 17 overall, and they have 4 possible cities to go into: Albany, Orlando, Sacramento, or Orlando again. Their closest city, I guess, is going to be Albany. It's really not that kind of.
And it works out. They get you as close as they can, but sometimes they can't get you close.
Indiana is definitely going to go to Orlando. Now, the thing with Indiana, there's 2 spots in Orlando.
Yeah.
Do you put them in the Midwest region? potentially playing through to Kansas City, or the East region potentially playing through into New York.
I would imagine Kansas City because it's closer.
Kansas City being closer as a tiebreaker, since we have two choices for Orlando, put them there.
Chad,
Miami,
would you look when you were placing Indiana in either spot? Would you look to see if there was a Big Ten team already in either region?
You do not necessarily look at that because once
That's
you
an
get down
old
to the
rule.
once you get
I
down
know
to
what
the
he's talking
five,
about. Yeah.
yeah, once you get down to the 5 line, like for example, if our next when we put St. Mary's in soon, if they end up going into the West region as well, as long as they're not going to play Gonzaga in one of those violations of playing before the regional semifinals or the regional finals, as the case may be, that's perfectly fine. It used to be that the first 4 teams from a conference all had to go to different regions. That only applies within the top 4 seed lines these days. So
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was an old rule that if you had 4 teams from the same conference, they could not be in the same region, no matter where they fell in the seed list.
Perfect
Yeah.
example. Our next team up is going to be Miami. We already have Virginia in the East. We don't have any error codes popping up here. We can put Miami right there in the East.
Yeah.
And now I mentioned St. Mary's is our next team. Now this is going to create a problem here. Watch what happens. Well, see, Gonzaga and St. Mary's play each other twice. This will be scheduled. This will be a potential second round game. Not going to be allowed.
Right.
That's an error. So Miami, you don't get to go to Orlando. You have to go to Sacramento instead.
Oh,
And we swap St. Mary's.
They went
with
from the
them.
closest region to the
Yeah.
one that couldn't possibly be further away.
But which team are you going to penalize? You're going to penalize the lowest of those other 3 teams in line. So you're going to penalize Miami.
Yeah.
Wow.
almost
Again.
played at home.
And then they get to go play Gonzaga instead of playing.
Connecticut. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the 6th line here. Rutgers is the top of our 6th line. Albany would be their preference. So that's easy. Illinois.
That's not fair. How come they get to go so close?
Illinois gets 2 choices for Greensboro, either Louisville or in Louisville or in Kansas City region. They'd rather be in the Louisville region, I assume. So we'll put Illinois over here in the South.
It's pretty equidistant, actually. Yeah.
I hope that's a game where both Tennessee and Illinois end up wearing orange.
San Diego State obviously is going to prefer Sacramento over Greensboro. Creighton, our last team left on the 6th line here, fills out, but we've got a problem here.
We do. Oh yeah, Xavier Creighton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Xavier and Creighton would be a second round match. They played twice through the regular season. We do the swap again, and now San Diego State gets screwed. Wow, we're just watching teams get screwed left and right here.
We didn't realize it would be this unfriendly when we started this. Maybe we should try this again next week.
This has been way more screwed teams than we normally see.
Yeah,
But
than what is normal.
Let's go down to the next line here. Duke is up next. Obviously,
and
of
you
these
want to get
sites
them
here, to
close to
Columbus.
home in New York.
No, that's where they are. Providence would obviously prefer Des Moines over Denver. Iowa would prefer to be. It's gonna have to go to Denver, but they'll go to the Kansas City region, and we'll throw Arkansas in the last Denver spot here. How did that line work out? All right, no problems with that line.
Yeah.
And finally, the up next, the 8 line. We start with Maryland. I guess they prefer Columbus over Birmingham. Is that correct?
I would think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michigan State would prefer Des Moines over Birmingham. Oh, wait, hold on. We saw an error here with Purdue and Maryland. So we're going to have to send Maryland to, I guess we'll send them to Birmingham in the Kansas City region here. That is not an error. Now, Michigan State, we're probably going to have the same problem with Purdue being there, unless they're only playing about
they didn't play twice.
Yeah, they are playing
They
twice.
play
So,
twice.
Okay.
so with that being up, we're going to send Michigan State out to Des Moines instead. That'll be their next closest city rather than Birmingham. Now we got Pittsburgh and Northwestern. Pittsburgh would prefer Columbus, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Northwestern would also prefer Columbus, but too damn bad.
Oh, but Northwestern might run into that same problem with Purdue. I don't know how many times they played in the regular season. So we may, with all these Big Ten teams on this line, we at least had the ACC team to play in Purdue's region for that second round matchup. So that is our 8 lines. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, before we go further, occasionally we've had teams show up in a light green color, like where you would see Nevada, for example. I don't know if they've changed the rules, but there have been years past where we try to avoid sending teams out of their natural region, like a certain amount of years in a row.
Yeah, it is. Well, you do supposed to take a look at, you're not supposed to go out twice in a row in 2 consecutive years. The problem is, looking back 2 years ago was the tourney in Indianapolis, so that rule is not going to show up at all this year,
Right.
Stalika. But if we do a show next year, we can discuss that. Let's take a look what we got so far. Here's our potential second round matchups and some potential fun games here, including, let's see, Gonzaga, Miami, K-State, Duke, Arizona, Arkansas, Virginia, and Rutgers. Kansas and Michigan State is a potential second round game.
Mhm.
That'd be a pretty
And if we're
interesting one.
talking Xavier and San Diego State, is it going to be one of the best offenses or the best defenses that comes out on top?
The unstoppable force and the immovable object.
As we get to the 9 line here, we're going to start getting some first round matchups set. But we start the nine line off with Nevada, whether they belonged it or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, Des Moines would be the closest city for them. New Mexico, I guess Birmingham is closer than Columbus.
Yeah,
So
and then they would play into the West.
Auburn. Well, Alabama, you don't get to go to Birmingham. Auburn, let's see if you do.
Alabama is- yeah, Alabama
may get to
is in
Okay,
Birmingham.
okay. All right. Auburn, you're gonna have to go to Columbus because of Alabama being there. NC State, you get a conference match with Maryland. Oh,
Yeah,
not conference match with Maryland in the first round. So Pitt, Auburn, Maryland, NC State, Northwestern New Mexico, Michigan State, Nevada.
Yeah.
That's your first round games there. We shouldn't have any problem with the next team up. That's Florida Atlantic. And they probably want to go to, what city do they want to go to here, Griggs?
Is it Columbus?
Columbus. We'll send them to Columbus.
Yeah.
As you guys can see here, this does get a little dull here, but we are getting down to the end of the at-large bids at least. West Virginia would go to Des Moines, assuming there's no problems there with conference rematches. And of course there is.
There is, yeah.
So if we can't send them there, we're going to send them to, we'll send them over here to Denver, see if that's a problem. No, that's fine. Oklahoma State is going to be a problem with Baylor. We know that already. So
Yeah.
it's also going to be a problem with Texas, I believe. Because Texas is the 2 seed
Yeah.
there. So, sorry, Florida Atlantic.
Yeah. Well, not too bad. I mean, they're
okay,
down
okay,
in Miami. They wouldn't exactly-
well, here's the
Well,
problem.
we
though.
might be able to get Florida Atlantic to Orlando because of this.
Actually, this is a very interesting situation here. Oklahoma State cannot go to any of these 3 pods because of a Big 12 team on the 2 line here, and they would be the 10 seed. They play each other a full double round robin. That means with West Virginia already on the 10 line above them,
Oklahoma State's got to go down.
Oklahoma State. Let me put Florida Atlantic back here. Oklahoma State cannot. This is one of those rare situations. Oklahoma State cannot be on the 10 line. Oklahoma State will be bounced to the 11 line, even though they're a 10 seed. And we're going to skip instead to USC and Missouri to finish out our 10 line seeds here. Make sure there's no problems with any of these games. So Oklahoma
And
State.
this, sorry, Chad, and this actually does happen in the real
Yep.
committee room. This does actually, this isn't just we're making this up. This happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to send Oklahoma City here to the Midwest region. You see that one is highlighted in orange. I'm going to go ahead and take that highlight off here.
Oklahoma City, I don't think they've been D1 for a number of years.
To Kansas. Yeah, that highlight in orange was where we were temporarily slaying the first 4 games. We'll move those around. But Oklahoma State, drop it down to the 11 line. They're going to go to Greensboro. That is not going to be a problem. Our next team up is going to be Mississippi State. And between Sacramento, Albany, and Greensboro, I guess they would prefer Greensboro. So
Yeah.
that's where they will go.
Yes.
And that concludes everybody above the first 4.
So,
And that's a problem.
Except it doesn't.
No.
Except it doesn't because we got to send
Yeah.
Mississippi State to Albany instead.
But there's another Greensboro.
No, Oklahoma State's in the other
Oh,
Greensboro.
but Oklahoma State's there. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Now we've got 2 sites left here. We're up to our first 4. First thing we want to double check it. We'll create error codes if we don't. Greensboro and Sacramento. If these are both Thursday, Saturday sites, it will be a problem because one of these first 4 winners has to go to a Friday, Sunday site. They'll be playing the Wednesday first 4 game. They have to have a day off. I see Sacramento is a Thursday, Saturday site. Greensboro is a Friday, Sunday site. So that's fine. We're not going to have that issue.
Yeah.
So we start with the Texas A&M Memphis game first.
Chad, can you play a team in your conference in the first 4 in Dayton?
You can.
Well, yes and no. Technically, you could play a team from your conference, but only if there are 3 teams from the same conference in the first 4. They will rearrange it to avoid that conference rematch otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, this is
Thank
something
you.
I don't really agree with in the way that it works, but you would think that Texas A&M would play Kentucky and Memphis would play Boise State. That's the way a bracket would work. The best team versus the worst of our first 4. The second is the third. No, the
It's
way it actually
allowed,
works
yeah.
is Texas A&M plays Memphis, Boise State plays Kentucky. You go right down. I don't agree with that. That is
I
what
don't
the
either.
rules are. The manual has not changed. Texas A&M is the top team here. They'd rather be the Greensboro, so we're going to send them to the South region on the 11 line for the Texas A&M Memphis game. And now we're going to see if we have any conference problems here, which we probably will. Okay, we've got one of those dark blue codes there between Texas A&M and Memphis. I believe these 2 teams, and I have a little tester here that I could do it. These 2 teams met in the regular season
They
in
did.
Memphis.
in Memphis. If we could switch Memphis and Boise State and avoid that, it will not be a problem. And let's see. Did they also play in the regular season?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, A&M and
Yeah.
Boise State.
Okay, and we definitely don't want A&M playing Kentucky, so we're going to go back to the original matchups here. This is one of those we call the soft rules. There's no
Yeah.
way you can to avoid it. Texas
And
A&M
they don't want to move a team out of the first 4 to avoid it
No,
because that's not fair to somebody. Yeah.
You will never move a team out of the first 4. Those 4 teams will definitely play in the first 4, no matter what you have to do to make it happen. Boise State and Kentucky is our other first 4 game. They're going to Sacramento. Again, we're running into a little problem here with the Kentucky and UCLA having met in the regular season, potential second round game. If I swapped our sites in the 2 first 4 games, let's see if that would make worse problems or better problems. That makes worse
A
problems.
worse problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be another rule I think we're just going to go ahead and ignore.
Yeah.
It's a potential second round game between Kentucky and UCLA. It's a rematch. Again, you're not going to move teams out of the first 4 to avoid that.
But this is what we would call a softer rule and not a hard and fast rule like we saw with the lighter blue.
Especially with it being in the round of 32. The reason they got rid of that rule was because they didn't want to assume wins in the round of 64. And the reason why they brought it back, I have no freaking idea.
Okay. We are up to Oral Roberts. I guess we're going to send them where? Albany, or I guess just to Orlando. We're going to send Oral Roberts to Orlando. We'll let them play in the Midwest region.
Mickey's house. Yeah.
Right. VCU up next. They're definitely going to want to prefer. Would they prefer Orlando or Albany? I guess Albany.
Yeah.
Okay. Charleston would definitely prefer Orlando of what's left here. And we'll finish this one off with Utah Valley. They get to go to Sacramento. At least we get one West Coast team staying out west.
You always like it when it works out for the 12 line. Yeah, we have Arizona going to New York, but at least Utah Valley is close.
We move on now to Southern Miss. We will send them to I guess
to Orlando.
To Orlando in the Midwest region, followed by Kent State. Sleeka, where should we send Kent State?
I would say Albany would be
Albany.
the closest.
Albany for Kent State. We'll send Drake to Orlando, and we'll finish this line off with another, with UCSB getting to go out west as well, to
Hey.
Sacramento. There we go. We're finally getting teams in the right regions at least.
Oh, that Gonzaga. I mean, you can't see the bracket, but Gonzaga UCSB is going to be a fun game.
Liberty, only 96 miles from Greensboro, but we don't think that would really be home court disadvantage. So
Correct.
we will let them go and play Tennessee here in the first round. Eastern Washington, they also get to go out west. Another spot out in Sacramento open up there. Furman to Greensboro. And Iona gets to play Iona to Albany. So we're actually keeping teams fairly close to home in this slide. So we're doing a lot better now.
Well, they always said we liked the under the radar teams. So yeah.
Princeton gets to go to Columbus. That's not that far. Northwestern State, I guess we're going to send them to Des Moines or to Denver. I guess to Des Moines, right?
Des Moines, I would
Des
think.
Moines.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Last 2 teams in this line will be Vermont. They do have to go on a bit of a trip out here to Denver. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
And Youngstown State also happens to go to Denver. It means we're down to our final line here. Oh, we ended up with a little bit of problem here. What was our problem? Baylor and Northwestern State. They met during the regular season, apparently.
Okay.
So we're gonna swap them with the next team below them on the seed lines. We'll swap them with Vermont here.
I believe
yeah.
Northwestern State won that game. Actually.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Baylor does not want to see them in the tournament. Trust me.
I don't think that was against Baylor though that they won it.
No, they
Wasn't
beat
it TCU?
Northwestern State beat TCU. They lost. to Iowa.
They played tight that Baylor game.
Sorry.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh, now our next team up is going to be UNC Asheville. Of the choices of Birmingham or Columbus, I think they would prefer to be in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So we'll send them over here. UNC Asheville. Colgate up next. They would definitely prefer to be in Columbus. Now we've got 2 spots left, Birmingham and Des Moines. Oh, wait a second. Colgate played Auburn this season, apparently.
Yeah. So
So sorry, Colgate, you're gonna have to go to, I guess, to Birmingham, right?
Yeah. Columbus is a Friday, Sunday, I think. So I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say we also want to check here. This leaves us with Des Moines, which is a Thursday, Saturday. Columbus, in fact, is the only Friday, Sunday slate we have in the South region, so we want to reserve that for the first 4 anyhow.
Yeah, and this actually works out really well because like you're almost not you're distancing it from Dayton, not from wherever the schools are, I think.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about.
Dayton,
No, it is good for teams to have to go from Dayton to Columbus. That is easy.
yeah,
And the top team is Maryland Eastern Shore. We're going to give them the Columbus rather than Des Moines region here. So we'll go Eastern Shore and Alcorn versus Alcorn State in the South region, first 4 game, and Moorhead State versus Fairleigh Dickinson in the East region. And let's take a look what we got here. It's a completed bracket. Miracle of miracles.
Woo.
And some fun looking games here. When you look at this, what stands out to you guys?
I see
Man,
a very
I'm-
not safe for work rivalry between Moorhead State and Fairleigh Dickinson.
That would be a
explode.
very ugly game there.
Yeah.
Baylor, Tennessee in a regional semifinal in the South would be fantastic.
Yeah, trying to see if there's anything that's particularly fun here.
I did not give my Rutgers team an easy road at all. Mississippi State,
Yeah.
then Virginia, then Arizona. I definitely did not create this bracket out of favoritism for anybody here. But that is your bracket. What we're going to do is get the copy of this bracket posted below. Let me run through each of you. Any other final thoughts on anything we did at all tonight? Dorman.
Every year you hear, oh, CBS Turner set up Duke to go to Greensboro, or CBS set up Kentucky, North Carolina in the second round. By this exercise, you can see it's tricky. It gets complicated. Things have to move. Things have to get going to a different site. And also remember, the problem we didn't have tonight is the conference tournaments also can throw wrenches in here. You have a team on Sunday morning, let's say in the Atlantic 10, that would be getting an auto bid if they win, but if they lose, they're totally out, where the other team might be safe already. So there's a lot of different scenarios and moving parts come Sunday morning that makes it hard for the committee. So all those conspiracy theorists, they set this up, they set up, you can throw that out the window. This is a hard project to do. Even with the computer, they do not mess with it.
Exactly. Stalika.
I believe we're only 2 days away from the selection committee revealing their top 16 right here. So it'll be curious to see how close they are versus the product that we've put forth tonight.
I believe it's next week, actually, the 18th.
Next
We'll
week?
double
Yeah,
check on that.
it's next week. It's the week. Yeah, it's a week from Sunday.
Griggs, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, in terms of conspiracy theories, this is the least conspiratorial bracket I've ever like. Most of the time, it's kind of fun to look at this when you're done and think, "Oh, look at these two. This is an old rivalry, or this coach used to be here." I'm not seeing any of that.
Yeah, we didn't really make that fun of a bracket, honestly.
This is kind of a boring
sometimes.
bracket.
I'll tell you here. Let's go back to that placements, the screen here one more time. One other rule here that we did not go over that did not come up this year is if BYU is in this bracket, which means this year if they win the West Coast Conference tournament, they cannot be placed in a Friday, Sunday bracket for either the regional or the first or second round sites. Makes things very difficult for bracketologists trying to avoid that with all these other complications and even have to move a team off of a seed line.
Yeah, because
the
I
other
remember one year they played Oregon in the first round, which was a regular season rematch, and the committee simply was not going to rework the C list just to accommodate BYU.
Yeah.
Right. I will. One other thing here: if you do want to be a bracketologist and you say, "Well, I want to put together one of these fields like this," but I saw how difficult it was even with the computer, let alone, trying to do this on my own and try to look up these rematches and everything like that. So it's out there. If you ask very, very nicely and you direct message us at HoopsHD on Twitter or me at @CSherwood_1973, maybe you can get a copy of this workbook. Maybe.
Yeah.
But you better ask very nicely. That's all I got to say.
I just want to know what workbook the puppet's using to put together some of his brackets.
Who knows?
The
But on
puppet
that
book.
note, on behalf of let's get everyone up on the screen here. On behalf of David Dorman, John Sleeka, and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us for this, whatever this podcast was. Talk to you
Bracket
again real
builders.
soon. Bracket builders.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.